So let me know if you don't want to be recorded, if you wind up speaking. That was requested, and I forgot to start right away. So okay, so that's Comet Swan. Should be visible later in May if something doesn't happen to it. And of course, we all know about comets, right? They're just like cats. They have tails and are unpredictable. Okay. All right. So the May star parties, and I'm gonna talk a little bit. I know that there's a question in the chat about Metcalf and JJC and the like. So for the safety of its members and the public, the MES will continue to follow guidance of the Minnesota Department of Health and the Governor's Office regarding gatherings. So we know that there's no gatherings of any appreciable size. Certainly, I think the number that they threw out was like 10 people, and they all had to be part of the same family type thing through May 18th. So after that, we'll have to see what their guidance is. But I suspect that anything that's a large gathering will probably still be restricted for quite some time. So that's kind of my second bullet there, is that it seems unlikely restrictions regarding large groups will be lifted soon. So we've canceled all public events through May, and we'll handle this on a month-by-month basis. But I'm guessing that we'll probably not have anything in June either. Some member events may be able to take place with modifications, such as the recent social distancing cooperative Messier Marathon. Chris Sedness, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You want to talk about that a little bit and how it went and what we did?
Sure. You're putting me on the spot. I certainly can. So we had an opportunity for a big experiment. So what we tried to do after deliberating on the forums for a while on what we could do was to have everybody be at home or in a safe place observing and cooperatively trying to see as many Messier objects as we could. And I think it was a big success. Some things didn't work as well as I had hoped. The spreadsheet was kind of a pain. But we had, I think, was there like 11 participants? I can't remember how many we had that logged objects, and then several more that were on our online chat that we had set up watching. We got 277 total observations, and that included 97 Messier objects. So out of the 110, we got 97 of them, which is spectacular. It's worth noting that Don Gazdick, I hope I say that right, Don, got all 97 of those objects. So he kind of carried us into the morning objects. So yeah, it was a great success. There were a couple imagers that were sharing pictures. Mark Jobe was one of them, and Mark Connolly was another, sharing pictures in that chat as we were looking at objects. So it was fun.
So the question that I have is, are there any plans to do the Virgo Venture the same way?
I've thought about this, and I know there's been some requests, and I didn't email. There's a Chris who emailed about that, and I'm not exactly sure if we could do it exactly the same way, given how dim some of those Virgo objects are, and the fact that a lot of us are in our backyards. But we can certainly do some sort of online observing event like we did again. Maybe lean on a little bit more photography for some of it because of how dim some of these objects are, but certainly, yeah.
Well, we'll just have to see what the situation is, because I don't think that takes place actually until June something. So.
I think it's May, so yeah.
I seem to recall it's actually in June this year.
But the May 22nd, 23rd.
Oh, you're right.
What it was advertised
it's Memorial Day weekend, isn't it? That's right, Memorial Day weekend. Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, well, yeah. So we'll see what happens.
But certainly we can talk about doing something very similar to what we did. It was fun, and seeing the pictures was an interesting aspect to it.
Yeah.
So
So I just want to make everybody clear, and if I'm speaking out of turn, then please correct me. So as of right now, Long Lake Conservation Center is off limits. They are closed. And the J.J. Casby and Metcalf, the Bellwyn Conservancy has asked that we not use those facilities or the field at all. So those are closed as well. Eagle Lake Observatory, all of the buildings except for the restrooms are closed, and that includes the MAS buildings that are there. Now, can you go out there and just set up your telescope? Yes, I suppose you can. However, I caution you on that because we don't want to have a real large group out there, because that would probably draw some attention to people. And the other problem with Eagle Lake Observatory is that is our public observing facility. And if you get a lot of people out there starting to set up, it's going to look like a public star party. And so you may get, people just wandering up, and some may adhere to the social distancing, and some may not. So I'm kind of discouraging people from going out there and using even the land out there. But like I said, I can't really keep you from doing that, but just kind of use your head on that. The last thing we need is to get some bad press out there with the Carver County being our host out there. I'm sure they would not appreciate if we did something like that and drew bad press, because they'll be the ones who will be getting the bad press. So, and then we have CGO. All the buildings at CGO are closed. Nobody can use those. We have no way of disinfecting them. So there's those buildings are closed. Is Steve or Steve's on, isn't he? Steve, what's the thought for either you or Vic on just going down there and using the grounds?
Yeah, Vic and I have talked about it a little bit, and I pretty much agree with him. Vic's thought is that there shouldn't be any reason why we can't use the grounds. Definitely adhere to the social distancing rules and everything. The only thing the only building a person really needs to use is the outhouse. We do have hand sanitizer in there, so a person could, hand sanitize as they come in and or go out, and use that room. So pretty much we're saying, if you'll allow it, we can let people go to Cherry Grove.
I don't have any real problem with that, as long as we can maintain social distancing. Go there at your own at your own risk, so to speak. But I think that we're all pretty used to the whole idea of social distancing and using the masks and the things of that sort. So I'm okay if people want to go down and just use the field, but again, let's be cognizant of how many people are on there, and I guess that's all I'm going to say about that. Any questions? Okay. Public service announcements. Mark Jobe, you're back up.
Good evening. So last month, I think we had to save the date for an all-day imaging workshop. We're still planning on the same thing, all day. If you were involved last year, we started about 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and went, well, it was raining, so we went, I think, like till 10 or so, but we were mostly confined to inside and just telling war stories. This year, we're planning kind of a 4 type of presentations, one on narrowband imaging, one on principles of calibration, calibration type images and guiding. And then also we are going to do a planetary planetary, the moon, sun. So we found somebody that's interested in that, and it seems like there's been some interest in that floating around the club. So we thought that was a good idea to add. Yeah, so it should be fun. And then, I mean, if anybody's a beginner, we certainly don't want you to feel like this is too much or anything like that. Come on out. We certainly will have enough breaks and enough time where we can help you out, have discussions with you. People are going to bring their equipment. This is all assuming that we are going to be able to gather again at ELO. And if we can't, then we're going to try and work something out virtual to where, we do the presentations maybe virtually and still be able to talk and have conversations about astrophotography and the whole imaging process. Even we can maybe mix in a little bit about software and stuff like that too. So it's Saturday. I think the date's wrong. I think we've changed the date. I think it's the weekend. I think it's the first weekend. I think it's I thought it was August 5th. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If that's the date. First. August 1st. Yeah. So 2 weeks before that, we were going to do it August 1st.
Okay.
So that would be the only change. I think that's even what we have on the ELO calendar now as the reservation. We were trying to get somebody to come out and spend a couple hours with us, but we couldn't make that work out. So,
all right, I'll
change our date.
I'll change the slide before I post it to reflect August 1st then.
Yeah, so this was August. It's August 1st. Started about 1:00. We'll probably do like last year, some kind of dinner brought on site. However we manage that, we haven't really talked about that, and we're trying to figure out what's going to happen with the whole thing as to whether or not we're going to even be able to get together, because if we can't get together, well, then we can't have dinner together either. So, but if we could probably have a Zoom dinner together, maybe, or something like that.
Okay. All right. Well, got a couple months before it happens, so we'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah, we figure we don't have to make that decision, and it's we are going to limit to again to about 40 people. So we'll stand by. We'll figure this out, and we'll make some posts and some more announcements, and we'll just let you know. But we do kind of have the program kind of set. If somebody has something else that they'd like, something that they'd rather see, throw it at us. Just make a post on the MAS forums on the Imagers forum, and we'll consider it. Or if anybody's got my email address or has access to my email address, certainly drop me an email. Or Doug Neverman. Doug's well known. Doug and I are teaming up on this. So we talk regularly. So thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Talking.
So Matt, do you want to show your images there? So let me stop presenting so you can present.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Coming up here shortly.
Is that you?
No.
How many are there?
Okay, I am presenting my screen. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I've got somebody with their mic on too, talking over me, I think. Everybody mute.
Yes, you had that.
Yeah, make sure everybody's muted.
That's
Russ
I think that's Russ.
and Mark.
Russ, you need to mute.
Thank you. All right. All right. So in the spirit of get to know a constellation, I just wanted to share a little experience. I've been doing astronomy for a long time, but I've never paid a lot of attention to the moon. And my son bought an 8-inch telescope from the club last winter, and he was out messing around with it. And all of a sudden he gives me a call. And he goes, "Hey, what's this weird, this arch looking thing on the moon?" And so what I did here is I kind of simulated it to kind of give you an idea of what I think he was looking at. You got this kind of a overexposed view of the moon, and then you see this little arch on there, and he calls me up to ask me about it. And and I had never seen this before. So I decided I'm going to go outside, set up my telescope, and see if I can tell what he's talking about. So I did that. And immediately it made sense to me because I've been doing this before that, oh, it's the rim of a crater, but I didn't really know much about it. So I zoomed in on it with my scope and I took a photo and I sent it to him and he said, this is what you're looking at. You can kind of see, you know, you got this mare, you know, this flooded basalt, you know, plain of cooled lava, if you want to call it that, and then the rim of a crater. And because it's right on the terminator of the moon, you're not seeing the dark base of the moon so well, but you are seeing the edge of the crater lit up really beautifully. And so after that, I thought, no, I really need to see this a little bit better. And the thing I wanted to emphasize is that this is that ridge is coming up through sunrise on the moon, because this is a gibbous moon. It was waxing. And so this view was coming in, you know, this part of the moon was coming into the sunlight as the moon was going around the Earth. Let's see, I'll turn on to the next page. So I didn't know which crater it was. I didn't know I really don't know more than a few craters on the moon, I'm embarrassed to say, I suppose. So I thought, I got to find this thing on a map. And so I'm looking at it, and I had this nice picture. And at first, I really didn't know, I couldn't find a match. And so then it occurred to me, I took the picture, all the pictures that I took through a mirrored diagonal. And so what it did is it basically rotated, or didn't rotate the image, it flipped it left to right in my view. And so I was trying to match the craters and all that kind of stuff. And the problem is that a normal moon map shows everything all well illuminated, so you can't see the bright ridge there that we're looking at. Well, eventually I figured it out. It was mirrored, and so then I was able to find it pretty quickly. And I thought, I'll make this up for my son. So I labeled a few of the key craters in there and sent that to him by email. I did this with my Nikon camera. The first one was with my phone. And I part of the reason I'm saying this is because getting into astrophotography in any kind of a real sense, and I'm not doing it the way so many people are doing it in the club. I'm trying to do it with simple gear that I've got at home already, and you know, like 6 or 10 second. I didn't even go to 10 seconds, like 6 or 7 second exposures. So it's pretty quick. No stacking, nothing fancy yet. Well, after I figured out where it is on the map, I thought I wonder if anybody else has ever seen this. Well, of course. And so I looked and did a global search on this. Once I figured out the name of it, Sinus iridum, whatever it is. And I found all kinds of stuff on it. You know, obviously this is stuff people have seen all over the place. And it's really kind of pretty. So I have the link up here where you can just do a search for Bay of Rainbows. I thought that was a very poetic name. And then I got a couple of fun facts. You always got to do fun facts when you're get to know a constellation. So the official name in Latin, Sinus or Sinus iridum, or the Bay of Rainbows. I guess that's what it technically means. I didn't know that. And some people nickname it the Golden Handle because of the exact reason we've seen. It's on the northeast side of Mare Imbrium, a Sea of Rains, and it's over on the upper north. Well, for the moon, it would be the west, but from our view, it's up over in the upper left corner or side edge, sort of. It's got craters nearby named Plato, Archimedes, and other famous ancients. The crater itself, which if you look at from one side to the other, is 260 kilometers, about 160 miles across. And I thought, well, how long would it take to drive across, you know, at highway speeds? And it's about 2 harbors to north, up to 2 harbors, which is a pretty decent drive. The crater rim, it gets up to about 2,600 meters. Hang on a second, I've got some people who need to be admitted here. All right, and then 2,600, I said, well, how high is that in Earth standards? And it turns out if you start in Denver, where it's kind of flat land, and you go up into Rocky Mountain National Park, it's about the same height as the 14ers up there. So I thought that's pretty incredible because it's a very similar kind of anatomy there where you've got a flat, almost perfectly flat plane, that mare, and then you're going up to 8,500 feet above that. So just relative elevation, it's pretty decent. It's only visible as an arc or a handle once per 29 days, or the moon's rotation around the Earth in relative to the sun. I might be a little off on that number, but basically it means for some number of hours in one day, it is visible with that kind of a detached crescent look where it's above a dark plane that you can't really see very well. And so for me, the next steps are to try to see it again in June, and try to, I haven't done the calculations or anything to see how long it's visible for or predict exactly how when to look for it, but I'm going to try to get into that a little bit. And then, and I would challenge other people to do the same. It's really kind of cool. And then apparently about 14 days later, it will appear as a reversed shadow. Now you'll be able to see the backside of the crater, but you won't be able to see into the depths of the crater again because the rim will be shadowing it. And the bottom line is it just looks cool, so try to see it and image it if you can, and if you can catch it. So you got to know when to look because you don't get a large window of time. And that's it for me.
Cool. Any questions for Matt? Okay.
Just a quick comment. When we do planets at the pub, showing people the craters that are the crater rim, just like a rim, it's like a ring on the dark side. People at the pubs, the public that we're trying to reach with the outreach, they really enjoy seeing the things that are just appearing with sunrise.
I agree. That is one of the coolest things when you look at a moon through a telescope, is just to be able to see that texture, and know that you see those shadows and the shapes and the depth. I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public service announcements? All right, moving right along. Once again, a call for Gemini articles. We're getting kind of toward the deadline here. May 10th is the deadline, but I know that Father Brown contacted me and said that he's getting kind of low on his backlog, so he needs more articles. So if you can send some articles in, maybe send some articles about how you're doing astronomy during the pandemic. So that'd be kind of interesting, and get a few more articles in there. So this month, May 10th, I think he's got enough articles for this issue, but he's concerned about the next issue. So please send those in. All right. Astronomical League. Jerry Jones, are you on?
I am.
Well, you got anything to talk about?
I don't have anything. There are no additional people who have gotten awards, although it's a little harder to keep track of them now since I'm having the national coordinators send everything to people's homes. For example, just today I sent John Marchetti's Urban Award in to Terry Trees, and who knows? I would imagine that'll be accepted. So even though John's not on, congratulations, John. I will have to say though, in response to the magnificent presentation on the moon, you guys need to do Lunar One. It'll show you all those really super cool things about the moon.
Good point. And that's when anybody can do, because you can see it in the city, you can see it in the country. It's easy to see.
Absolutely.
And there's objects. So if I recall, in fact, I'm kind of in the midst of Lunar One, but I'm not very far along. But there are observations you make naked eye. There are observations you can make with binoculars, and there's a few observations where you need a telescope, but really not that many. So you can get quite a bit of it done pretty easily. And
it's a great program. It's a fairly easy program to do. You can get it done in 1 month, which is kind of cool.
Well, that's true. You could. All right. And do you want to make any announcements about the NCRL award thing?
I can put them up on the listserv. I'll make a point of doing that.
And post on the forums. So our regional astronomical league group gave out awards for a few things, and of course they couldn't have the convention, so they did a video of that. So Jerry's going to post the link to that video up on the forums there, and maybe send it out in the listserv as well. And also, if you haven't been made aware of it yet, if you're Alcon 2020 has been well, they say postponed, but essentially canceled, and they're going to move directly to Alcon 2021. So that's the big news from the national and regional level. Okay, anything else, Jerry?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks.
All right. Well, yeah, I thought for sure you'd say this, but okay. All right, here we go.
Get out there and observe. Crying
There you
out.
go. That's right. All right, Steve, you're on.
Okay,
I'll go
sounds
ahead and
good.
stop. Oh no, I'll go ahead and do just tell me when to change slides.
Yeah, please, because I didn't set up mine to present from my PC.
Yep.
Go ahead to the first slide. We'll get started here. So anybody that attended the, what was that, January or February, one of the earlier BSIG meetings probably recognizes this. I had the typical thing in the presentation that I did on, how to select a telescope, how to select accessories and stuff like that. The typical thing of low-end telescopes to avoid. Well, I had never seen these Celestron StarSense Explorer series before. I'd seen the, low-end Celestrons. I'm going, I wonder what that thing is. I go, wow, these are kind of cool. So I saw they have four different telescopes. You can see on the left side, 130 millimeter 5-inch Newtonian reflector, and then a 4-inch refractor. These are the better of the two, and they've got a little bit heavier duty mount. I have no experience with these things, but I'm going, interesting. I don't think I need to spend $400 on a beginner scope because, like that 130 millimeter matches up with the very first scope I had, which I got rid of probably, 5 years after I got into astronomy. So don't want to go with that, but I was kind of intrigued by it. Want to switch to the next slide, Dave? So they also have two other lower end scopes, one little refractor and one a Bird-Jones Newtonian reflector. And, I did this normal thing of saying, do not buy a Bird-Jones Newtonian reflector. No matter what you do, the things are horrible spherical aberration. And I also said, well, probably don't get one of these StarSense Explorer refractors either because, they're really lightweight, shaky mounts and stuff. But I was intrigued by this StarSense stuff and looked into it a little bit. And I found there was a Cloudy Nights forum thread on this thing that's now currently 15 or 16 pages long. And it's basically people looking at this StarSense thing as a pointing system and seeing, hey, can you adapt it to other telescopes? Celestron intended these things to be a entry-level scope. It uses your cell phone to become a pointer because it actually does a plate solving. It has a little bracket on the top, as you can see on these pictures, and you put your cell phone into that thing, and it's got a mirror underneath the phone that is reflecting the image from the sky into the camera. So it can resolve where it's at in the sky. And I go, this could be kind of neat. I wonder if I want to buy one of these things. So I mulled on it for a little while, and I actually ended up buying the LT80AZ since it's pretty inexpensive, 179 bucks, and I think I got it 10% off at OPT. So not a horribly expensive investment, and maybe I can use some of the other pieces, and maybe this will work. So anyway, want to hit the next slide, Dave? In the forum, I was looking at, how can this thing be used on different telescopes? And one of the guys from Celestron chimed in on it, and he reiterated what they were saying, that the product is designed for beginners. The goal is to make it as easy as possible to have complete newbies find stuff. And there were a lot of questions about how good is this? Can you do it with a first quarter moon? Can you do it with a full moon? Can you do it with a lot of light pollution and stuff like that? And he answered a lot of those questions in this slide. And I'm certainly not going to read this slide, nor the second one that's coming up, because he did a pretty good response on that. But there are quite a few good responses on this. So it seemed pretty interesting. So I want to click to the next. Okay, click to the next 2 of 2. So this gives a little bit on the process for it. So basically, it's got a specialized bracket that's in the telescope or connected to the telescope, and you center the phone's camera over that bracket's mirror, and then basically line it up like you'd line up any finder scope, and then away it goes. So, he says in this thing, in that second big major bullet, that they've spent 5 to 6 man years developing the product. And I think it looks like they have, because it actually works pretty well. So I wanted to not have a beginner's scope because I've had a lot of, I've had enough of those things, but I wanted to see, can I adapt this thing to my 12.5-inch truss top? So Dave, can you flip to the next page? So this is a picture of what I received. It's on that little 80 millimeter scope. And I wanted this one because I assumed I was going to take that fixed scope bracket and take it off of this OTA and somehow adapt it to my Dob and, use that whole bracket and everything. I get to looking at it and I'm kind of going, well, first off, I tried taking off one of the screws. Oops, my PC just went into, thank you. I couldn't see anything. It went dark. Anyway, I was intending to use that lower bracket, but looking at it, it's on the top. I started to take a screw loose, and it felt like the screws were held on with nuts on the inside of the OTA. So I'm going, I don't think I want to take this off because I'll never be able to put it back on if I want to, and I might want to be able to use this OTA. So I decided to just take the upper bracket because this part with the mirror and the cell phone holder and everything clamps down in or slides down and clamps into that bracket that's on the OTA. So anyway, first thing is, okay, what's the angle? I better figure out what I have to do to match up that angle on my Dob. So I have that angle to look at and try to figure out some adapter. Dave, you want to go to the next one? And also another picture of it. So it turns out it's whatever direction you're looking at it, 108.5 degrees or 71.5 degrees. So that's what it looks like without that, the plug-in part of the thing. So I had to duplicate that geometry. Next slide, Dave. And also I had to duplicate, since I decided I didn't want to reuse that, or I didn't want to take that bottom adapter off. I'd have to, make an equivalent of that. So this is the bottom side look of the the removable part of the adapter. You can see that it slides in. It's got these 60-degree angles in there. So I've got to work with that angle. I've got to work with that 118-degree angle. My truss stub on the right-hand side of this thing, you can see it's a Obsession clone of sorts, but this was the mounting system for the truss poles on mine is one of the variants that Dave Kriege showed in the Modern Dobsonian book, and I just copied that. So it's just a wood clamp up at the top. The nice part about it is that bottom of that wood clamp is, perpendicular to the optical axis. So I've got a good reference surface to work with, but I had to be able to clamp onto those truss poles that are 15 degrees apart. So a couple of other angles to work with there. Next one, Dave. So this is what I came up with. Ended up just using some Baltic birch plywood. You can see that triangular part underneath my truss clamp is at an angle that matches up with that angle. I was able to just duplicate that 60-degree angle of the thing so I could slide that puppy in. And if you see those two nylon screws there, yes, I did tap wood. Just to have the set screws go in there. I tapped 1/4-20 taps to have a couple of screws to hold the holder in. So you can see what the holder looks like on the scope sitting in my basement, hence it's got a background instead of being outside. So that's a quick look of what that looks like. You can see the phone bracket there. You can see the mirror, and it's not nearly as dirty as it looks, just like any typical mirror surface in the light. It's better than it looks on the picture. Next one, Dave.
Is that just clamped onto the truss there? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't describe the whole thing. Yeah, if you see, you can see the majority of the thing is to the outside of the telescope, and there's that gap between the front side and the back side. So I have a screw that's on the back side, and it's got a knob similar to the ones that are holding the trusses on. There's a knob on the back side that I clamp that together. So it's squeezing the truss poles together to hold it on. And I see Suresh asked the question, does it change my balance? Actually, not much. Because I set up the balance on my scope with the counterweight so that I can have both my Telrad on there and also my 9x50 right angle right angle finder on there at the same time and not overbalance. So I just don't put the 9x50 on there. So I leave the Telrad on and I put this thing on, and it's about this, it's about the same weight. So it actually balanced out pretty well.
Okay.
So anyway, this is just a first try at it, and it seemed to work fairly well. This is a picture, same thing, with the phone plug hooked onto it. And when you start it up, basically it looks like this. You see a picture of the sky. You can start, and obviously since I'm doing this in my basement after I set it all up, it says at the top, Star Sense can't find the scope position in the daylight. Try it outside and at night. Good plan. So anyway, you take it outside and at night and set it up. And unfortunately, I didn't take any. Well, I took a couple of pictures. They didn't turn out too well, so I didn't use them in the slide deck here. But it does do a good job of finding it. These are the menu screens that you see. So again, Celestron set it up for for beginners, to give them a good chance to get started and actually be able to point at things and see stuff. So the moon and the planets, the bright stars, double stars, the full Messier list, the full Caldwell list, and then some constellations and some of the asterisms. They're big asterisms for the most part. It's not like the coat hanger and littler things from the ones I looked at so far. What's notably missing from this is the NGC list, and the NGC list is missing because again this thing's designed for beginners with this. But again, the Caldwell, 99 of the 109, 98 of the 109 objects on the Caldwell list are NGCs. So pulled up my old spreadsheet that I had, for observing things. So I've got a list that translates from one to the other. So you can see on the right-hand side, in the middle and the right-hand side, the Messier and the Caldwell ones. So you just scroll up and down, you click on whichever one you want to look at, give some information about it, and down in the lower left-hand corner, you click Go To. And the way it ends up working is, I skipped over the setting it up. Basically, setup for this thing is, once you're in the dark, point it into the sky, and it uses the phone's accelerometers to figure out where it is, and it finds out generally where it is, and then it takes a picture. It takes a few seconds for it to take a picture, and it plate solves to figure out where it's at. And it does, and so you'll see it move around for a little bit, and then it snaps a little bit when it does a plate solve to go into the actual position it's at. So if you click on any Messier object, I looked at M13, of course, when I was out a few nights back, and it did that. It has the arrows to point over to it, and away you go. And when you get close, you stop, and it says, don't move the scope. It's determining position. You'll see the screen snap a little bit. The display of the sky snap just a little bit to the actual position. You continue moving it. You put it in the, put it on the cursor hairs, and it's there. It just worked.
Interesting.
So I did that in my driveway. I did it down at Cherry Grove. I think the next slide is a kind of an observing report on that. So go ahead and do the next one. So yeah, like I said, the first light was from my front lawn right here in White Bear Lake the other Monday. And White Bear Lake, home of all of the White Bear Lake car dealers and Maplewood Mall. And so it's bright here. And it was just after nautical twilight. I didn't have a lot of time before the clouds came in. So I had the typical sky light pollution and also the typical local light pollution with, porch lights on and stuff like that. And we had the crescent moon. So it was before first quarter, 18% illuminated, but it just flat worked. Obviously I went for the moon and Venus first, and they were right there. And then I went to M35, M82, M51, M101, because those are in the part of the sky that I can see from where I was parked in my front yard. And it just worked. And like I said before, the accelerometer, the phone uses the accelerometer to kind of get close. And then when you stop, it takes that picture and does the plate solve, and it moves a little bit. And then you fine position it. And when you do it, it was boom, just in there. And like M101 and M51, they're really kind of, that night they were really hard to see in my scope. So if I would have been star hopping and trying to find them, I would not have found them. But it put them right in the center of the eyepiece, and I could see them. Jiggle the scope a little bit so you can see it, and I could see them. So go to the second one. So the second observations, a couple of nights later, I went down to Cherry Grove. And that was one of those pretty decent nights just before the first quarter moon last week. and or yeah, last week. Scattered clouds coming in and out, and it was again the same thing, really good. Uh, Everything that I looked for, I found. The only thing, I must have bumped the phone just a little bit, or I didn't didn't get it exactly lined up. But everything was right there. But it would be like, if I'd find it, then I'd center it in my scope, and then I look at the phone, and it's showing maybe a half a degree low or something like that. So either I didn't get it perfectly lined up when I was aligning the scope to or the phone to the scope, or I'd bumped the phone or something along the way. But it was close enough that it was worked as a good finder. So anyway, next one.
Yeah, I got. Go ahead. Finish it up
wait.
here, and then I got a couple of questions.
Okay. So anyway, I've just got a couple of end thoughts on it, basically. So the reason I was looking at this thing was I'd always intended to put digital setting circles, the encoders, and a computer on my scope, but I made it. It was a homemade scope, as most anybody that's ever seen this one knows, and unfortunately, I made it too low so that if I were to put the azimuth encoder on my scope, when I bring it around, one of the collimating knobs would whack it off. So it's too low. I'd have to modify the bottom part of my scope, and also I've got a couple of handles on the side of the mirror box. That's where the altitude encoder would go. So it'd take a little bit of work to set mine up with DSCs. And also, one thing that I found really cool about this is you don't have to do a 2-star alignment. All you do is line up the camera to the telescope so that they're aligned together, just like you line up your Telerad. And once you've done that, it's lined up. It's taken a picture of the sky to figure out where it's at. So it doesn't have to have a 2-star alignment. You can pick up, if it's a scope on a tripod like the ones they intended, you just pick it up, move it to another part of your driveway, and you can go for it. So it's nice for places where you've got a lot of trees and your skies are kind of screwy, that you have to move to a different part of the yard or something to be able to get to a different part of the sky. So that's one thing I really liked about it, and the fact that you compare the cost. If you take like what we have on all of our club scopes, the club's big Dobbs. We've got the Argo Navis and the I just drew a blank, Servocat. And with the Argo Navis and Servocat, just the Argo Navis itself is probably on the order, with encoders, of, I think that's probably $800-900. And if you go with the Nexus or the Sky Commander, that's probably in the $500-600 range. So this thing is $179 for a scope, and you've got to do a little modifying. And of course, you got to have your cell phone too, which is really the expensive part. But for the parts that you don't have sitting in your pocket already, it's not very expensive. So it seems like a pretty good little thing. Matt's asking, do they sell it without the scope? No. That's one of the most common questions on the forum, that forum thread that I talked about on cloudy nights, that no, they only have intended so far this thing to be this way, by the Star Sense telescope. So that's what I did.
Okay, I got a couple of questions. One is,
Okay.
did Celestron mention if they're planning on upgrading to include NGC objects, or is it strictly going to be a beginner type thing and they'll never do that?
They have not said that they're going to do that. They make it sound like it's intended as a beginner type thing, but there's no reason why they couldn't put the full NGC list in it.
Right.
The phones certainly have enough storage space in them, and the app would be capable of it. I think it's really a demand thing. If they get enough people they see doing what I did and talking about doing what I did, they'll probably get enough demand that they'll start building a kit that people can put onto their own scopes.
Okay. Next question I have. You bought the refractor. If you bought the reflector, would you be able to take the base off? Would you be able to reach into the tube and get the base off with the nuts on the back?
Yeah, I'm sure you could. Well, I probably could with the refractor too, but I just
Oh
didn't
yeah.
want a chance wrecking.
Well, the refractor's a little more. Well, it's a little more problematic because you'd have, if you wanted to put it back on, you'd have to take off the front.
Yeah. Well, part of my reason for wanting, my reasoning for picking the 80 millimeter refractor was, number one, it's cheap, list price $179 instead of $399 for the better refractor or the better reflector. And I have no intention of ever buying one of those Bird Jones Newtonian scopes, because I've tried making one of those starter scopes work better, and it's hopeless. Those things are bad. And so it would be, okay, take the OTA, throw it away. Literally, throw it away. Do
Well,
not
that's
give
kind
it
of
to
what I'm
anybody. Throw it away.
Yeah.
And then I came around to the scope itself, the OTA itself. So I mainly bought this for the software because you can download the app. Just go to the Apple's whatever, the Google Play Store or the Apple store, and I'm drawing a blank on the Apple name. But anyway, you just download the app, but it's not enabled until you buy the scope and you get the code.
Right.
And the code's good for either 4 or 5 phones, so you can share it between a couple of phones in there. But anyway, I just wanted to have something that I might have a chance of using, and it was still pretty inexpensive. So actually, if you go to the next slide, Dave, that kind of answers some of the other things. So what okay, if I don't want to throw the OTA away. So I took a look at the OTA. It's a 900 millimeter. It's a long f11 80 millimeter refractor. It's a typical lightweight tube, of a $179 department store type scope. And when I looked down into looked into the scope without any eyepiece on there, I see these three little shims at 120 degrees apart, and like, oh wow, collimating tabs in there. That's not too cool that I can see them, but it is what it is. It's a cheap tube.
Yeah.
But I actually spent another $22 and bought a 8-inch Orion dovetail, and I put it on my AZ4 mount, my Altaz mount. And so I put it on there, and I'm looking at the moon and stuff, and it's like, holy moly, this thing is good. This thing is actually a good tube. I got really sharp views. It was that night that the cross is visible that everybody was talking about in the forums.
Yeah.
And I could see the cross easily. I could look at some of it was just really providing fantastically sharp views. And I'm used to, when I defocus my Dob to look at the airy disc,
Yes.
it's just kind of this hovering, wavering thing, and I see a little hint of the airy disc lines. This thing, it was sharp. So it's like, for a cheap scope, the tube, this thing is really good. And I didn't even really see that much chromatic aberration or color fringing when I was looking at the moon and looking at Venus. So what the heck, it's worth keeping the tube. So I've got a good tube that I can mount on another scope. I left the bracket on it so I can put the StarSense bracket on that thing as well as use it on my Dob.
Yeah.
So I've got some pretty good parts there.
Cool.
The other parts, next slide, the other parts, it came with the typical cheap 90-degree plastics body star diagonal, but I thought it was kind of cool that it would actually provided an upright straight view. It's not an upside down view, so it works for terrestrial, and it actually did look pretty good. I used that when I was looking at the moon. It has, a typical 25 millimeter eyepiece that it's not a Plossl. I'm not sure what design it is. It's a plastic body. It works pretty good, but I couldn't get it to focus in my Dob. But I was mainly using one of my Explore Scientific ones to get the close-ups of the moon. And I didn't bother testing the Barlow and the 10 millimeter eyepiece. And the mount, it is a cheap mount. So, it's the typical, low-end Altaz mount. It's looks like it's anodized aluminum, so it's kind of nice that way. But that's the one piece I haven't really figured out what I'm going to do with yet.
All right, cool.
But anyway, I think it's a pretty cool thing. It's a relatively low cost investment, and it's nice. It doesn't give you the whole NGC list, like I said, but it gives you the full Messier and the full Caldwell list and a few other things. So it's not bad for the price.
Okay, cool. Any questions?
Yes, Mark here. Question about there was someone else also asking, is there a chance to add on to the database, or are they going to have an expanded database you can into it? And third, is it possible you can have an app like that can use to your laptop and a camera you can stick onto it, so make up your own instead of using a cell phone? Thank you.
The answer to every one of those is I'm not sure. Again, what they were saying in the forum thread, I haven't looked at it in the last couple of days, but as of the last time I looked at it, they hadn't said anything about making adapters for anything else or making the database any larger or anything like that. They could certainly do it. It's just, if they get enough demand to do it. And there's nothing stopping them from giving you the ability to add more objects into the database. It doesn't have that capability in that particular app right now.
Well, when you
Bruce
think
asked-
about it, this is, if it's beginners and you think about the telescopes that they're on, I mean, maybe the larger, the 5-inch, you might be able to see quite a few NGC. The little ones you to put them on are probably pretty limited, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they market this. If there's enough demand for it, they may like you say, Steve, provide a standalone version of that with a larger database.
Yeah, certainly the
Answer one question. A cell phone connection is not needed. It works without the network. You don't need a cell phone connection. It's a standalone thing that will work anywhere.
That's correct, Mike. It's just a standalone cell phone. It's just an app. The only thing it's using from the phone is the accelerometer. It may use the GPS. It certainly does the time, of course. It probably uses the GPS, I'm guessing at that, but it uses the accelerometers and it uses the camera. They also said, and I skipped over that one slide that talked a lot about details. They did their initial testing with an iPhone 6, which is a pretty old phone by now. And so it worked fine with an iPhone 6. And again, it was not too fantastic a skies. Even close, when I was down at Cherry Grove, it was, the quarter moon then. First quarter moon, and I was able to find objects that were relatively close to the first to the moon itself. So it seems to be able to find objects in fairly bad light pollution. So they did a good job on it for what they did.
Okay.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
This is Conrad. I have something similar to that. I mean, of course, it's called StarSense. What you were using is called StarSense Explorer. And it does plate solving too. One thing that I have to do is after it finds the 3 stars, and I go to an object, it's usually off, even though I keep the bracket on my OTA, and I usually have to do a calibration to center the star, to choose a star, and then I have to do another alignment. So, is there any calibration involved with this unit at all, or you just do the find the object?
No, this thing, I've looked at the StarSense for the C8 and the other scopes like that. And I've got a C8, but I don't have the StarSense. I didn't opt for that one. This is totally different. It's going through the phone instead of going through the Celestron handpad, the hand.
Right.
It's the kind of the same idea, but no, the only thing, if it does get off, well, it doesn't get off. So far in my limited experience, it doesn't get off. As long as you've done a good job of, putting your scope on some object, centering your scope on some object. I centered it on Venus. And then I can, do the pinch to zoom thing, so I spread my fingers apart to zoom in and put the cursor right on Venus. And it's right on. So it didn't seem to, for the couple of hours I was using it that night, it didn't seem like it needed a recal or anything like that.
Okay, thanks.
So it's a pretty cool toy. It's got its limitations, but it's pretty cool.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Any other questions?
Question from Dick Jacobson.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is there any like a dim red option or anything to reduce the light pollution on your dark adaptation?
Yep, there is. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, there is a dark mode or a night mode on it. When I turn it on my iPhone, it's an iPhone XR, whatever, the cheap version of an iPhone 10. Everything's, red and dark and everything, except there are a couple of small little white lines that are from the phone's OS, not from the application. But yeah, there is a red, the red mode that makes it dim, and that works pretty well.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Okay, just got another quick thing here, and then we'll wrap it up. I wanted to give an update on the NASA missions because, as you know, with the COVID-19, some of the operations have been at least greatly scaled down or put on hold. For a lot of the missions, they're not doing any physical testing. They're doing, if they could do something from a home office, like testing software and the like, they're doing that. But there are some missions that are moving forward, and one of them is the Commercial Crew Program. This is where they're setting up a 2-man crew in a Falcon Dragon on board a Falcon 9, and they're getting ready to launch that on May 27th using Launch Complex 39, and they're going to send that crew up to the International Space Station for an undetermined amount of time, and then bring them back in that same spacecraft. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. That will be the first time in quite some time that we've actually launched U.S. astronauts from American soil. So pretty exciting on that one. The next one is Perseverance, which is Mars 2020 rover. That launch window is July 17th to the August 5th, and that's still on schedule as well. Obviously, we all know that Mars only comes, into opposition every 2 years. So they need to launch during this window in order to get that to Mars. It's what they call a Curiosity class rover. So it's roughly the same size and has the same power system as Curiosity. But it does have a couple of cool things. One is that it is going to have a Mars helicopter technology demonstration that's going to take along with it. And of course, it's also going to be doing sampling and then leaving those samples for eventual retrieval and to bring them back to Earth at some future time. So the launch, the first launch window is in July. They'll be launching that. They're going to cruise there. It's a 7-month cruise, arrive in February of 2021. Then there's, of course, they're going to use the Sky Crane. They have made improvements on the Sky Crane as far as targeting the launch area and being able to move around a little bit to get an optimal launch area. They're landing in Jury's crater. And then the surface mission, it's about a 1.5 Mars year lifetime for this device, although it'll probably last longer than that if I know NASA. 20-kilometer traverse capability, and then it's seeking for signs of past life and has returnable cache of samples. So it's that little gift that they got there. It's the mission objectives for geology. They're going to explore the ancient environment on Mars, understand the processes. They're going to do a little astrobiology, see if they can find any kind of minerals or biosignatures. Sampling, to collect about 40 samples and get those ready to send back. And also measure temperature, humidity, wind, and dust environment, and also demonstrate in situ resource utilization by converting atmospheric carbon dioxide into oxygen. So very much a next step toward a manned mission to Mars in the future. And last but not least, this is the 20th anniversary of the International Space Station. So they'll be doing some celebration there. I just had my birthday recently and was given a 864-piece Lego model of the International Space Station in honor of the 20th anniversary. So looking forward to putting that together. And next meeting will be...
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
This is Suresh. Real quick, the Chinese are going to be launching a mission to Mars as well in July.
Okay.
Not sure if you read up on that, but I have a little clip here I can drop into the chat. They call it Tianwen, and it's, I guess that's going to launch in July. It'll be their first Mars mission, I believe. And they actually just opened up a 70, I think they said it was a 70-meter satellite dish to keep track of it during the mission.
Okay.
So I'll just drop this into the chat so people can see what I was looking at.
Very good. So next month we will have another online meeting. I've already talked to the Fairview Community Center, and because the schools are closed for the remainder of the year, they're going to be closed in June. So that's going to be another online meeting. We'll just have to see what the situation is as we move forward from there. And that's all I got. Any questions? So I did record most of this meeting. And I'll also put this deck, I'll put the recording as well as this deck up on the forums this weekend. Any questions?
Great job, Dave.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's you know, a team effort. Thanks to Steve for giving his presentation. That was great. Thanks to Chris and Matt and those guys. I think this worked out pretty well. So
it's a learning process for everyone. Just about everyone's learning how to do these online meetings these days.
Yeah. But we had 74 people on here. I think 75 at one point. So that's a lot of people on here. A lot of them have their cameras going, and yet I think the audio and the video were good. So,
hey Dave, we got a question coming through about the JJC repairs. Do you have any update on that?
The last that I heard is that they were planning on coming up at some point soon. Is John on, perchance? John Heyman? Really not. So I don't know. I don't have a specific date when they're going to be here. The last I heard is that we have been in communication with them. They have the pieces fabricated and are ready to come up when they have a break in their window. They make domes for a lot of different people, and I don't know when their window is to come up. I know they were talking about end of April and May, and sometime in May. So if they're going to stick to their schedule, I would say within the next month they'll be coming up and doing that repair. We've talked to Bellwin, and Bellwin is fine with them coming and doing the repair. So there's no problem there. The other thing I can give you an update on is the repairs to the Onan Observatory, a roll-off roof. We received this week the final drawings from the engineering firm, and Merle is going to be able to take those drawings and go out for bids to get some contractors bidding on that work and get that going. Merle, and I saw you on earlier, so I know that you're on. Of course, when you get the bids from the contractors, you get things scheduled. At some point, we're going to need to probably take apart the telescopes that are on an observatory and move them probably to the classroom to keep them safe while they do the work.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So I would imagine it's going to be probably at least another month before we make a decision on who's going to be doing the work. So probably looking, I'm going to guess, Merle, maybe sometime in June. We'll have to see what goes on. I know Camping with the Stars is scheduled for sometime in July right now, but I question whether that's going to be able to be hit. It's going to happen, but we'll keep everybody informed, and at some point there will be a work party that'll be asked to go out and work on that. So, all right, anything else? All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and stay safe, stay healthy, get out and observe if you can, and we'll be in touch. Keep looking at the forums and listserv, and enjoy yourself.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Yeah, good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, take care and stay alive.
Yeah.
Great job, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, let's see. We can now stop recording. Here we go. Ooh.